How's everyone this morning?
Good morning, happy Tuesday. Welcome to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, Anne, and disembodied voice, Justin. At least I think we have a disembodied voice on track.
I am here.
You are
Hello.
here. Hello. Yes. Sorry for the delay. I had a last minute Kiri blowout, of course, like 2 minutes before showtime, so I had to go and deal with that. But But she's empty, and we are unlikely to get, knock on, where's wood? Knock on wood, we are unlikely to get another catastrophe during the course of this show. You hear that little dog? She's such a silly goof. All right. Good morning. Hi, Namazi. How's it going? Oh, out of coffee, Shadow Raven. Wow, that sounds like a serious environmental catastrophe. That's what that sounds like. It's like running out of air, right? Like, not that I'm a coffee drinker anymore, but I remember being a coffee drinker, and it was like that. Gray Paladin Art. Hey. Other than my rocky start, my dog deciding to, have a blowout, it's okay. It's okay. Hey, how's it going? It's gonna be a chill stream. And we might whip out the wet palette, which I know is insane. Ah, okay. Small gap filling. Oh, for pinning. If you overshot a pinning job, I probably would use green for that. Or if you have Aves or a really fine milliput. Aves and milliput have the advantage that you can, smush it in there and then, use a little bit of water on your fingertip and smooth it over really fast and easy. Green, of course, is going to take a little more time to smooth through. These days, I tend to reach for green for everything just because I've gotten good enough at it that I'm just like, oh, it's here, it's right here. I don't have my Aves anymore because I just don't go through it fast enough. And I've never been a huge fan of milliput, so I tend to reach for green for everything these days, but in the past, I have really enjoyed using Aves. Aves Epoxy Sculpt. But yeah, fine milliput will do the same thing. Even like David's Wood Putty, which is also an epoxy, but a little bit softer, would do the trick. Shoulder joint as standard human. Well, it's green is capable of making perfectly smooth texture, Nomad Zeke. It's just, do you have the tools to work it to that level, right? And do you have the ability to work it to that level? Like, do you understand green enough? And, how are you good at smoothing it out? Like, do you have the clay shaper that's going to give you that ultra smooth finish? Do you have the very small tool to get into the very small place? Yeah, so in that case, I would use milliput or Aves just because it's a little bit easier to smooth in because of that water trick that it does, since it is water soluble. So essentially, swish it into where you need it and then use a clay shaper or fingertip or something else that's, got that kind of finish. I highly recommend getting some clay shapers, though. They really do help when you need a little tiny but soft tip to smoosh things like that into small areas. They really help a lot because sometimes your finger's just too big. And sometimes you don't have something else that's suitably soft and smooth and non-stick to utilize in that manner. So I am getting a lot more mileage out of my clay shapers these days than I ever have in the past. Hello, planer. Yeah, all right, so cool. But yeah, green is always fine enough. I mean, if sculptors can sculpt tiny, tiny, tiny details in green stuff, green can do anything, really. It's just, it's just your skill level at green. Green is really capable of anything you want to do with it, almost, except for really hard edges. And the only bar is where you're at with your skill with working with it, which is actually why I recommend if it's a job that's good for green, you should use green. Because if you want to get better at green, the only way to do it is to use it and then maybe watch some videos on it and troubleshoot where you went wrong with it and then use it again with those things in mind. And in that way, you can actually get to using green at a very good level in a very short period of time. So let's go to Cam. Here we are. We're on Fire Drain again. And I'm feeling, I was feeling imprecise today. Feeling kind of slapdash, feeling like I just wanted to slap paint on the model. And so I have whipped out the wet palette, which has air bubbles in it. Bad wet palette. Bad. Because some days you feel like painting precise, and some days you just don't. And today is a just don't kind of day. So I'm going to just put down some colors on my wet palette. Where is my blue liner? There it is. I want pure black. I want blue liner. Hello. Everybody's saying hello to each other. That's good. Ooh, kid with a fever. That's no good, planer. Sick kids are never fun. I was a pretty low maintenance kid when I was sick. I just slept a lot. Slept a lot and read a lot. And drank a lot of orange juice. That's pretty much it. Doing some blobs of paint on my palette. I have 2 bottles of pure white here, and one is definitely close to dead, so I should use that one. I'm just going to set up almost all of the colors that we've been using because I can mix a lot from them. So I don't know quite what I'm going to want to work on at any given time. And once I start, I don't think I'm going to want to stop to put a new color on the palette. So I'm just going to try to get as much as I can on the palette to work with first. So we've got pure black, blue liner, and white for the dark metal. We're going to have to get rich leather for the gold for sure. Nice blob of that. We need our lantern yellow and our NMM gold highlight. I want to use lantern yellow. Oop, lantern yellow needs a little more shaking. Sometimes you put your paint down and you just know you need to shake it more. So I looked at this guy and I realized it's a real pain to figure out how I wanted to do these bracelet things. They've got so many overlapping bits. And I also realized that I needed to put some darks in him. Everything otherwise was going to end up red and gold. I didn't know that I wanted that. I still want some of the blue-black kind of dark color on him. So what I really needed to do is to block out where I want this stuff on this model. He's just got so much going on. And sometimes when you've got so much going on, the best thing to do is kind of block it out and see where you are. I'll put this over here. NMM Gold Highlight is on the board. Now we need our ruddy leather. I'm still thinking I want to do a Hellhound pelt on his back, but now I'm kind of thinking I might start it with a blue-black and fade it out to Hellhound colors. But I might not, because the hat here, his hat is going to be the blue-black, so we're going to do that probably first and work out from there. I may actually end up going with the ruddy leather for the Hellhound pelt like I originally thought I was going to. Ruddy leather. And I'm going to want some red, because and some orange probably. Because I'm going to putz around with stuff. I want to have everything open. So let's get our oranges out. Which, remember, I'm using Volcanic Orange and Sunrise. Because, although not much with the Volcanic, but because they're good coverage oranges and they're still saturated. And this guy is a very saturated giant, so we want that. Use gloves, Valandar. Or put the mini on a plate. Or something, so that you can just spray onto it. Sorry that you got Sunrise all over your hands, but this is a learning experience. This is now an opportunity for you to do better next time. Everybody I know who primes with an airbrush uses gloves. Alrighty, so boom. So my palette, once I have it all figured out, there we go. You miss the pure white, but so I'm giving lots of room on the palette so that things don't run into each other and so that you can, mix when you need to. But, I have all my little happy little things laid out. David will be heckling me today probably because he is actually on the other side, not in a meeting as far as I know at this point. So we're working with a very complementary color scheme on Fire Giants in general. Let me slide my palette back so it's not shifting color. Get zoomed in. Boom. And get in focus. So right now, yeah, I do need that if I'm going to do the arm guards. So there's our Fire Giant. I am dipping his sword in the palette currently, which is not a very great thing to do. Huh?
Don't do that.
Don't dip the sword in the palette? Yeah, I know. Well, my quality of sleep was not great last night, so I'm liable to drop things, dip things in other things, splatter things, paint myself, paint my dog. All those things you do when you're, kind of sleepy and you probably shouldn't be doing this stuff. We've gotten way close. How did I get so close? There, that's a little better. There we are. Now we can see. Yes, we're using a wet palette, and think David will be convincing as we go. That's correct. So what I want to do is I really want to block out. First, we're going to block out all around here. We're going to figure out what we're doing here. And actually, I do probably want some red. We're going to ignore that for now. We're going to ignore that. We're going to grab our Black and our blue liner. And how black you want your iron is up to you. With Fire Giants, as I said, I like a complementary scheme, so I actually like to go kind of a blue-black. So I like to start kind of with a mix of blue liner and black, or just blue liner, depending on how blue I want it. If you want really blue metal, I would recommend starting with Nightmare Black. You managed to somehow paint your foot earlier. That takes skill. Genuine. That takes skill. You were just so wrapped up in your art that you had to accidentally paint your foot. So there you go. Priorities. All right, and the other thing I need to do for this guy is I need to fix his beard. And sadly, this means I'm probably going to have to grab colors from elsewhere, but I'm going to try to do it just with the colors I've got here. Originally, when we were painting this model, we were doing it all with Dungeon Dwellers, the box set. It's Reaper Bones. The colors that are a little later in the line got put out in boxes, and they are called Dungeon Dwellers. And I was pretty much just trying to mix everything going that way. That was one of those awesome mixing days. So this is going to be pretty dark here, since we're starting really, really dark. And I'm going to mix some white into it. I just want a base coat on it. If I'm going to wet blend and work fast, I do like to base coat first. So we'll see how this works. I may get frustrated with my wet palette. Now for highlights, I'm going to switch entirely to blue liner plus white. I just wanted a little bit of that black for the beginning. I've got light here. I might just go pure white. I got a lot of paint on the model, so I need to watch that. We're going to be doing slightly different highlighting and shading up here because this is, again, a cylinder and the top of the hat is a weird shape. But mostly I want to kind of block in what I'm doing. David is sneezing a lot lately. I think it's because we've got the smoke out here from the wildfires.
Yeah, it's probably the smoke.
Yeah, so he doesn't have a ton of allergies, I don't think, although we all seem to have them somewhere.
I'm allergic to wood smoke.
You're allergic to wood smoke, and now it's everywhere. The light sourcing Pendrake. Since I went with a light source that kind of goes down this way, a little bit obliquely on the helmet, and I did that because the helmet has that, that angle to it. So usually when you've got that sort of angle to the helm where it has that sharp angle in the front, you can see, kind of where it goes. Then it helps to have the light source be just a little off center so that you can highlight and shade. It makes your highlight and shading a little bit easier, to be frank. And the problem is that I highlighted the beard with a direct frontal light going straight down. So I need to shift my light over just a little bit to be in line with the actual light, which works fine actually because his head is turned slightly. Taking it slightly off angled with the lighting here actually works because that's when you're looking at the model straight on, that means the light source is coming down straight down in front. So that is what the problem is. And of course I didn't, see that until I decided to shift the light over here. And so the rest of the model, it doesn't really affect at this point, but this definitely needs adjustment. Oh, let's see here. Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, tell your daughter I'm with her. Weird colored sky. It's like the weird colored sky and especially the weird colored light, right? Let's see here. I suppose I could be using an even bigger brush for this. It would be even faster. How big of a brush do I currently have around me? I thought I had Giganto brush over here somewhere, but I'd only seen the flat. I might have put away Giganto brush since I don't use him very often. But I have a flat. Flats go fast when you need to cover a lot of area. Flats go fast. So we'll block this in using our ruddy leather just to get some of these colors figured out. And yeah, I can't go black at the base with the Hellhound fur because of the top of the helm. It would disappear. This way, at least, the top of the helm should stick out once it's all nice and highlighted against this reddish brown, which I'll bring up to, like, oranges because Hellhounds are on fire, typically. This particular Hellhound is now an ex-Hellhound and may no longer be on fire, but maybe he is. Maybe it's magic. Maybe hellhound fur just smolders no matter what you do to it. Maybe that's its special property, which would be actually a pretty cool special property, as long as it doesn't smolder and hurt you while you're wearing it. But if you're a fire giant, you probably could care. Alright, so ruddy leather is a really good start for this sort of reddish brown. It's good for bay horses. It's good for some chestnut horses. It's got just a great, kind of almost a burnt sienna to it. It's not quite as red as burnt sienna is, but it's a good fit for that color range. His fur obligingly only goes up to the edge of his armor. How convenient of it. Alright, I really haven't decided what I want with this stuff. Like, I'm kind of thinking maybe a gold rim, because then it'll go bright up against the dark skin. Then I'm looking at this and I'm just like, well, then there's not much room left. Like, that would have to be red. That would probably want to go black again. Maybe that will go red and black. I don't know. There's a lot of detail on here, and that makes it difficult. Is he really an ex-hellhound, or is he just resting? I think that he's really an ex-hellhound since he has no head anymore. That kind of does, you know, keep you from doing things like eating. That keep you being a non-ex-hellhound. Very saturated. Very saturated. Alright, I want some shadows. I want to do some wet blending. So I'm adding some darker shadows in, mostly around the gold there as I'm taking it down. We're not in too much danger since our dark is up here, so we're putting dark down here. We still have a lot of the hellhound color behind the heads, so we can highlight that up. We just gotta watch how far our shadows creep up the sides. We don't want our shadows to be very creepy. And I'm just pretty much doing a wet blend of the ruddy leather and blue liner, because blue liner is a handy color. One of the nice things about blending with the liners, about doing wet blends with liners, if you have a base coat down, because of course the liners don't cover as well as some other paints because they're supposed to be somewhat translucent. But this works for you when you're wet blending because you don't have to worry about having a really harsh dark color with a huge pigment load that you're trying to wet blend with. It can be very difficult to do that when if you were trying to wet blend with something like walnut tends to take over the show when you're wet blending with it because it's just so highly pigmented and it's so high solids and it's so strong that it overwhelms the other color that you're blending into it unless you keep that in mind and use just a little bit of it. So blending with the liners is a lot easier since they're still highly pigmented actually, but the base is much lighter and it's not high solids, so it doesn't take over everything, and it's a lot easier to blend in these colors when you're doing a wet blend without them overwhelming things. Do I want to do a little bit of general shading? I think I do. Off the back of the shoulders here, I'm going to darken this just a little. We have a lot of light on the subject, and all this wet paint is making it very shiny, but there you go. Justin is indeed with us, Jill. Or, sorry, Twisted Oma. Hi, Jill. Yeah, just checking. Checking chat. Everybody's kind of chill with me today. That's good. Everybody can be chill. Blendy. So, yeah. So just blending this in lets me set this up a little faster. Justin remarked that he didn't catch the stream yesterday, but that every time he comes back to this model, it looks a little more done. And so that's kind of our goal. When you're working on a huge model like this, it can get very long. It can get very tedious, especially because he's got so many details. Like if it was all like this fur, where we had big areas of blank space and, and big like swooshy cloth or something, big plates of metal, much simpler sculpt, this wouldn't be so titchy. But the fact that, we've got all these different areas that we probably want to paint all different colors and they're smaller, can make it a bit of a pain in the butt, to be honest. gonna grab some of my volcanic orange and see what I can do with it. Kind of want to establish some lighter color now on the tops of the shoulders. And because it's kind of damp here today, my ruddy leather is still pretty wet, so if not, I can just bring it back in. So volcanic orange is a pretty good highlight for this color if you're looking for that kind of glowing ember kind of look. It would probably be a little bit too strong by itself if you were trying for a more naturalistic color. Although it might work for a chestnut horse if you did mixes of it with your ruddy leather. Depends on the horse. There. Got a little bit more light so you can see how it kind of goes from a light to a dark. So that kind of sets us up right at the beginning, and then when we come in for highlights and shadows, we've kind of got it set up. I'll go a little higher on this, I think. I might need to wait for it to dry just a tad. And when you're doing this, do try to keep your brush stroke kind of in the direction of the fur, like I always advocate with wet blending fur. That way, if you do leave brush strokes, it'll all be in the same direction as the fur, so it'll look good. There we go. So we got a nice going off to dark charred color on the edges, which I can reinforce even more with some blue liner right around the edge as it dries. Now we really have to decide what we're going to do with these shoulder pads. Oh, Justin? Yeah, he's almost certainly doing a lot of work in the background, guys. Don't expect him to be too heavy into chat when ReaperCon is so close. It's just not feasible. It's nice to have him here today, just to have him here a bit. Unless it's urgent, try not to distract the poor man. He has much to do. Had to remember to shade that part. Trying to debate if I can mix something similar to the beard with the colors I have on the palette. I think I can. There. That's much better. A little bit of dark. Makes that dramatic. Crowley, is that an honest question? Because a ton? Considering that Justin is our only, like, streaming tech guy and, like, general video tech guy, and Reaper John is crying at your comment? Yeah, that's what I thought you were trolling. Trolling. The hamster is a troll, guys. Just like in Overwatch, the hamster is a troll. Making a mental note now. Hey, Creature East. Then you probably want to tune. If you want to sculpt, most people say ZBrush. And if you really want to get some sculpting tips, Creature East, and good to meet you, by the way. We have ReaperCon coming up next weekend. Not this coming weekend, but Labor Day weekend. And it's going to be virtual this year because of COVID. But our sculptors, I believe, are going to be doing classes. I have not checked the schedule. But Justin, do you know the sculptors are up for... Are there any ZBrush type classes?
There aren't any ZBrush classes, but there is a sculpting panel, but that panel is still being kind of put together.
All right.
At this point.
Yeah, it'd be cool if they just kind of got online and, like, sculpted for a while. But yeah, so maybe you can ask some questions on the panel. A lot of our sculptors still use traditional green putty sculpting, but most of them have switched over to ZBrush. And some of them didn't start with green work at all. I think Christine Van Patten just jumped into ZBrush whole hog. Which seems to be what people are recommending now. Is to just jump into ZBrush. It's pretty tough if you... Green stuff has a learning curve, Creature East. 35mm, most people don't use Fimo, they use green epoxy putty, which is extremely sticky and takes practice to work with. but does create good organic forms. So I use it a lot for conversion work and sculpting on bases. Like with Snake Lady here, we used green to kind of set up the sculpt on her rocky base. It's still work in progress, but yeah. So it is difficult. It will take you a while. It really depends on how good you are at focused learning. I think if you really tried at it, you could do it you could get used to green pretty quick. It also depends, though. Remember that sculpting figures means you need to have a very good knowledge of anatomy and musculature. Otherwise, the figures tend to look wonky. I don't know if you draw, but if you do, that will help. Polymer clay is used for larger sculpts, Matthephile. A lot of Julie Guthrie uses a mixture of green and Fimo for her big stuff. Dragons. Maldrakar was sculpted in a mixture of green and Fimo. Mostly Fimo, I think. But I don't know. Fimo's just not as good for the little tiny stuff. A lot of like the Todd McFarlane dragons were sculpted originally in Fimo. A lot of action figures that you see are done in Fimo. But I think when you get down to really small details, there's stuff that green stuff can do that's a lot harder in Fimo and other epoxy clays. Well, if you want to ever get it cast creaturist, you want to also use an armature. I'm not familiar with Beast Putty, so I can't give you the feedback on that. I mean, experiment, right? But if you want it to be put on mold, make sure it has an armature under it. And experiment. I mean, if you're close to a miniatures company where you can pay to have one of your pieces put on mold, then you can see. If you're just doing one-off sculpts, then you don't have to worry about any of that, of course. But if you actually want to produce something, but yeah, I recommend Study Anatomy if you do not have books. It's the comic book ones that Jason Wiebe suggests. I can't remember the name, but there's a whole series of them dealing with dynamic anatomy. Just checking my chat. Yeah, weapons and armor. Yep, epoxy sculpt or green stuff or Fimo or whatever. Yeah, could give you sharper edges. Oh, good, Tash. I'm glad you're looking forward to ReaperCon. Huh. Interesting. Well, if it's out there, then the only question is how is it put on mold? Creaturist. Well, and just these days, it's a lot easier to find somebody with a good resin printer to print out your figures than to find a casting house that'll put them on mold. Especially if you've never studied the art of how to create a figure to be put on mold specifically. There is actually, I mean, you do definitely want to think about it if you're going to produce it, mass produce it. It's a whole different thing. Reaper used to, at the artist convention, we used to just bring our sculptors in and have our mold making master, who was Kevin at that time, teach them about how models get put on mold so that they could sculpt with those things in mind. Because it's definitely a thing. Encyclopedia Anatomy. Good, good. I have a bunch of different anatomy books. Thanks for that that link to the free ZBrush, John. Yeah, I don't know if puppetry uses the same type of molding as miniatures do. With miniatures, when you're mass producing and when you're doing your masters, you use a vulcanized rubber mold. since you're casting in metal most of the time. If you want to do resin casting, that's a whole different beast. And probably simpler to set up on a small scale. And you probably can abuse things a little bit more in some ways. But I would just recommend finding somebody who's an expert in the business and talking to them, Creaturist, if you're serious about it. If you just want to play around, play around. But, I mean, there's a lot of people in this industry with a lot of knowledge. So it'd be a shame to not use it if you have access to those people. I'm going to get a little closer, guys. So I'm just blocking in my gold base to see if I don't like how much gold that is. I'm also thinking I'm going to go dark here. All of this stuff, so complicated. Because, of course, he's a king, and so he's got all these complex shapes that you want to figure out what they are and how to paint them. So I know I want to go dark here because I need something that's contrasting with the fur, and I went gold there. So something in here is probably going to be red, and I'm going to do another gold edge. I might do red and black with these little houndstooth pattern here on the shoulder pad. This one. Or I might just go red and just highlight it and shade it dramatically. But again, we're alternating, whenever you can, alternate dark and light. You can adjust it by shading, like bringing in more shading on my medium hellhound tone here, so I end up with dark next to the bright NMM and beard. Contrast is important. Possibly the most important thing. Oh yeah, good. Okay. Valendar has a point, Creaturist. We do have a sculpting channel in the Reaper Discord. Okay. Blocking that in. All of it being blocked in. I'm feeling a little better about this model as I block it in. I was getting really kind of antsy about the fact that I had no idea what I was doing with all this. So when you're not sure, then what the lesson to be learned from this is start just somewhere and then work outward from there slowly, making sure you're alternating darks and lights. That way all of your details will stand out. Oh, awesome. 1,700 members on the Reaper Discord. That's fantastic. Thanks, you guys. I need red. I'm seeing red. What color red do I want to use? Probably... So my gold is going to be highlighted up pretty strongly. So I probably want to go with a medium red for this, or start with one. I think I'm going to go with heraldic red. Come here, giant. Sit there. Stay. Sit. Stay. Kiri, old dog. Are you stretching? Yeah, you have to settle down. I know, David's not in here anymore. He left us alone. He had a work thing. Though he thought he was going to be here all day. But, come on, little doglet. What's up? Yeah, he's not there. Can you settle? Hi. Hi. Sorry, old dog is restless, guys. Just checking on her. Checking on her, make sure she looks okay. And that nothing's going on. Be good, little dog. There, we'll get some heraldic red. We'll go with that. I could start darker, but then I'd be in danger of getting just really close to some of my dark tones and my dark red, reddish tones up here. So I want some contrast again. So I'm going to go for something medium for this strip in between. Oh yeah, David did get called into a meeting. He thought he was going to be free, but he was not free. Yeah, I know. She hears him outside the door and wants to go investigate. But it's better if she doesn't shuttle back and forth just because I like to keep an eye on her. So we'll get some red in there. We haven't gotten red so far. This is our first red, and I'm going to have to assess it and see if I like it. If I don't really like this red, I might kind of overpaint it with some orange instead. Fire doesn't have real cherry red in it, so by going with red here, I'm kind of going in a different direction, and I don't know if I'm going to like it. So this is a reason to block it in and see. It also could just be a little bit too bright. Morning, Scrying Eye. See, I'm not certain about that. Not certain about this red. I'm going to do orange on the other one and see if I like it better. Because I will be using orange to highlight Hellhound Fur. We've got orange on the beard. So using something like volcanic orange, maybe with shading it with just a little bit of red, might be better. So this is a good time to be testing that stuff out. So do one in one way and do the other one in the other way and see which you like the best. At this point, it's so easy to paint over what you've done. And you're not going to lose detail just putting in like a couple of layers of paint. Oh, do I have a pet hair? I cannot see. Pet hair, pet hair, pet hair. I don't see one. That doesn't mean there isn't one. Kiri's fur is very aggressive. The other option for me here would be to go with a completely different color, like a blue. Something odd. Yes. Actually, Kiri isn't really one to investigate temporary pack members, but we've lived with David long enough now that he has graduated to real pack member. And thus she always is investigating. He's still like second fiddle to me, like when I come home he's chopped liver. But, you know, if I've been out on my walk or whatever. But if I'm not there, she goes and settles with him. So. Yeah, I don't know. It might have. That's pretty smooth, so hard for pet hair to stick. I don't know. So I'm gonna kind of like do this. That's a little bit too simple. Too analogous for me. This one, all right. I might like the red a little better. It is a little bit different. It's still with our warm color scheme. I can highlight it with orange to make it work better with my existing colors, but it's still different enough to stand out. We might just use it as an accent color here and there. So yeah, I guess I will. After all, I'm not enamored of the orange, and I'm more likely to go with the red. Kiri blesses all things with her fur. You are correct, Jetta. You are correct. Do 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 do. Alrighty. So yeah, about paint building up on Bones figures. When I do this wet blending stuff and blocking in, I am using my paint fairly thick. I mean, on the wet palette, it's getting kind of naturally thinned over time, but it's not terribly thin when I'm working with this wet palette. But seriously, you'd have to put so many layers on. If you put really thick paint on, maybe 8 to 10 layers in, you might see a little bit of smoothing out of texture. I am noticing a bit of shine, however, on this top layer. And sometimes browns and blues do that. They kind of end up looking kind of shiny, which is odd, but they react that way sometimes. So that's when I usually whip out the anti-shine additive. Hey there, Gergie. Trying to get this all working. All right. Do I want to flat that down now? I am annoyed at how shiny it is. It's less shiny down here. It's more shiny at the top. It could be just that it's drying very slowly because I did a more recent wet blend there. So I'll let it sit for a bit and see. Sometimes if a paint has a lot of pigment in it, which Ruddy Leather and that Volcanic Orange definitely do, a paint with more pigment in it will actually take longer to dry, and it may look shiny at first, but if you give it time, you will see it matte out eventually. Sometimes I have to keep that in mind when I was formulating paint for Reaper. I would be like, oh, the finish on this is all wrong. And then it would be like, oh, wait, no, it isn't. So. All right. Yeah. Okay, so I don't like you, Orange. I don't like you. I do not like you, Orange. All right. Block in, block in, block in. Now, these things, let's see if I can mix some stuff to adjust the beard. I'm betting I can adjust this beard. So I want to take some Volcanic Orange. I'm Because originally we were using goblin's flesh, or goblin hide, or goblin whatever Ron called it, which is a kind of a burnt orange. So I'm going to take a bit of my ruddy leather and I'm going to mix it in to volcanic orange and sunrise orange and see if I can get close. Unfortunately, on the wet palette, it is going to get thinned a bit. But mostly I want to kind of drop down. I need a little bit more brown. I can see that right now. Mostly I want to kind of drop down this part of the beard and bring it up on this side, right in line with this light source. So I want to drop down the saturation here in the light, make this side more shadowy. See, and adjust this side and bring it up. So I've got my NMM Gold highlight, my Lantern Yellow, and a little bit of white. And then what I'm going to be doing is bringing up this light to make it more evident. I'm going to be mixing it in a bit with my orange to get a wet blend going here. But I want my light to be going all consistent. And I will come back and catch, bring some darker strands in. But right now I want this light to be going consistently in the same area. And where I get shadow on this side, I want that to be consistent too. Doesn't mean we don't highlight this side. It just means we're not going to bring it up as light. So right now we're just blocking that in. Oh, let's see here. All right, cool. Animal talk. That's cool. Pet talk. This show could also be called Pet Talk. Reaper Pet Talk. Hey, Dave should host that show, Justin. Reaper Pet Talk with Reaper Dave. Everybody comes in.
Of all the people at Reaper who would love to do that, it would definitely be Dave.
Yes, exactly. Everybody sends in pictures and stories about their animals, and Dave features, different animals every week, and everybody is like overcome by cuteness and, fun stories, and that would totally be right up Dave's alley. I vote for this show. When Reaper is starting to look for new content, I vote for this show. Yeah, if you have 6 cats, I can imagine you would not allow them in your work studio. That just seems fraught with peril. The very idea of allowing that many cats near your miniatures. I'm going to bring up some highlights over here, guys, too. I didn't originally bring up the beard that much over there, but it really needs it. We're just kind of bringing out some strands now to make the volume come up a bit. Like so. Starting to look more fiery bearded, which is good because their hair is supposed to look like fire, so we do have to remember that as we are highlighting our way through this model. So what I want is I want the light to read really strongly on the face. And I want this beard's a little chunky, but by putting little lines, you can suggest a finer detail than is sculpted, because really these are just locks of hair with lots of individual strands. There, that's a little better. That's a bit better. Now we're seeing more of the light, and probably want a little more over here too. Gotta watch where our shadows would hit. Hair you want to highlight in a bell curve mostly, because it's translucent. So you want your highlights to kind of be in the middle on each lock, wherever the highlight source is. Oh, cool. Glad you're enjoying it, Creaturist. Hope that it helps you in your goals to becoming a figure sculptor. It is very tiny, titchy stuff. I'm just going to take some more of a pure white mix here and bring in little bit of spot highlights in the center to really make the hair start to come to life here. I'm going to keep this a little bit less so. Probably will bring it up a little bit at the bottom though. Toward the edges, I originally did bring it up a little bit. So where this hair down here ends up will depend a bit on what color this ends up, because these little chunky things I think are part of a necklace or part of a chain that goes between these two decorative elements here. So that's probably going to be gold. These are probably going to be gold. So what I'm going to need to do is be careful like I am here, because the gold gets really close to the beard. So I might actually want to do a blue-black border around this, like make it black iron and then have the inlay be gold. That might be a better choice to get those things to stand out from each other.
Yeah, I was just thinking that would be the best.
Haha, David is back. Thanks, Val. I'm glad you like him. I mean, we make a little bit of progress every time. With giants like this and big models like this, you really have a couple of different options. You can do like we're doing with the troll. You guys remember Rock Troll? Where, let me grab him. Oh, I should show you my finished models, guys. I finished that commissar I was working on. Hold on. I'll get them down for you. But you remember Rock Troll, right? Rock Troll, we painted like all like in big swaths of painting where we were highlighting and shading and blocking in everything, blocking in the light from the beginning. And I find that this works best on models that have big areas of a particular color. Like it works great on busts when you've got all that skin to work with, and then you can block in all the rest of the stuff as well. But this lets you kind of keep in mind your lighting very much stronger. Maybe you won't have to adjust as much because you're doing it all at the same time. You've got your light source in mind, and it lets you progress very fast. We made a lot of progress on this model very quickly. Part of that is that we're just dealing with a couple of different colors, but it's a little harder to do so on this guy where we've got all these different elements to play with. But, so that's one way you can paint a large model, is to just go for it and lay down, highlights, shadows, midtones, just do it all, like wet blend to your heart's content, or just block it in with really broad layering. That's one way to tackle a big mini. The other way is really to progress like I am here, where you're kind of troubleshooting it as you go. This is better for very, very elaborate minis where you might not be sure what your color scheme is totally going to be. Like I knew that I was probably going red, gold, black, or red, gold, dark blue, but I wasn't sure about that red. And so I'm going real slow and seeing like how these colors can alternate to bring out their different aspects. So it's like I said, sometimes you feel like painting quick, and sometimes you feel like painting precise, for me anyway, because I can do both. And it really is informed by the model. Both of these models have very strong light sourcing. The giant is just having his light sourcing blocked in piece by piece, and I have to constantly remind myself of it. The troll is a bit more efficient in that effect, in that I'm doing these big broad areas all at a time, so I can keep that light sourcing in mind for the whole area. And again, the fact that he is mostly green with some black indigo and lighter yellow accents makes that easier. So yeah, it's you don't have to paint the same thing the same way. Even when you've got a style, you may find that you may start models differently depending on the model, and that your style comes out more in the fine tuning that you do toward the end of the model. And that's none of this is the wrong way to go. Here, let me get my commissar down and show you guys. Even though, don't tell Ed I'm showing a Games Workshop figure on stream.
I was just thinking that.
Hush, 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 hush. So look, she's done, guys. I really like how the bronze pipe turned out, actually, down here at her foot. Isn't that terrible? When you paint the model, and then you're like, I love how this little, base thing turned out. So yeah, this is for commission. Actually, I'm mailing it later this week, but she turned out really well. It's all NMM, obviously, and reflective stuff. So yeah, so this is a commission I did. And I think she turned out really well. But yeah, I just love that dang pipe. I can't help it. I keep looking at the pipe. But yeah, so she's really cool. So there. I had to show you guys that on occasion I actually do finish things. You know, because I almost never finish them on the stream. Although we're getting perilously close on so many models. Like Juliana Herbalist, she's really getting close. I might whip her out this week just to finish her, guys. Oh yeah, I sent him pictures yesterday and he was like, oh my gosh, she looks fantastic. So I got paid. Yay, getting paid. The life of a freelance mini painter. I can buy more groceries. Yay. All right, but yeah. So let's see here. I do want to touch up the shoulder pad. It annoys me that it's imprecise. And I'm going to match the other shoulder pad to it. Then we have that red there to look at. It's just a little bit of red. Accent color at that point is what that becomes. But yeah, and I still have to do the backside of the Wraith, the female Wraith that we did, the incorporeal one. I suppose I could do that on stream too, for those who didn't see me blend that first one up. Since it's been a while since we've talked about her. Although a lot of you were there, so maybe she's too boring. Maybe I'm too boring. Maybe people don't want to see my backside painted. I don't know. The backside is definitely not as exciting as the front side. Definitely. Oh, I got some wet on her base, and it went on my paper. Must have spilled a little bit of wet palette water back there. All right. Let's move into this. So yeah, so that Commissar was definitely painted in this style where it's like section by section. She had so many, I was doing her from the box art, so it wasn't like super creative or anything, but she had so many different bits of NMM on her and little fiddly bits. That it was definitely a piece by piece kind of project. And it's easy to get overwhelmed with big models, right? Because you've got so much to do on them. And a lot of people get the same kind of feeling with a bust, right? Especially bigger busts, like 1/10. There can be a lot going on. There can be a lot of area that you have to paint. And so it's easy to kind of get overwhelmed and stuck. And I think you've got those two options to help you get out of that. You can either paint very fast. If you find that that fear is just sticking you in place, then paint fast. Grab the colors, smoosh them down, at least get a base coat, try to do some wet blend for shadows and highlights, block in your highlights and shadows, just jump in. Because that's the only thing. Rushing headlong at your fear is the only way to conquer it in that case. The other way to do it, if that just makes you freeze in place and scream with terror and run in the other direction, is to do what I do here and just work on one small part at a time. Eventually, you end up with an amazing looking model. And once you get well into it, where you have parts of the model that you really like, that helps motivate you to keep going. Oh, thanks for the sub. The resub, Vaxar. Wow, you're almost at a year. Almost at your 12 month. We should have parties for people when they hit 12 months. That's good, Mathval. I'm glad that your spirits are turning out really nice. I like the indigo to teal kind of fade you got going on. Alrighty. Oh, come on, little dog. You cannot be, like, super unruly now. David is in here with me. You can go say hi to him. Now I have to question whether I want another red accent right here with, maybe with the gold. Yes, she did go say hi to David. There you go. Silly dog. I'm going to block this in red. I don't know if I'm going to be sold on it in red. Sometimes I find these days, oh no, Blorf. Oh well, we can touch it up. Sometimes I find these days that I definitely am moving toward a more limited palette kind of style. Like, I like a limited palette with a lot of neutrals. Hi, Kier. Do you want pets? She's like, I've got my drawer open, I've got my box open. This makes very little room for a dog to get pet in this. Hey. She's like, nope, gonna stand here. You spurned me. You had too much in the way. Is that too red? I'm gonna be breaking up that red with gold. Hi! Oh, I got pettins after all. Old dog hanging out. Awesome. On this side I'm kind of caught. I mean, I guess I should really do a dark barrier again. I'm going to have to highlight it pretty well to get it. And I'm definitely going to want to go very blue. I mean, with my, this is why I chose a blue-black, is that even if I end up with dark against dark, like I am going to here, the blue here is going to be very different from the brown on the biceps, so it should stand out. I mean, monochrome is the easiest way to paint Nathafile. Really, all it is then is highlights and shadows. Just choose a color. A lot of people will do a gray that has a little bit of another color mixed into it, or they'll do a twilight approach where it's more like a blue, green, and white. Or they'll do the sepia, which is more like a yellowish brown, and they'll use different warm and cool approaches for that. I kind of like the duo. I always wanted to do a duochromatic approach, do the with the burnt umber and or the raw sienna and Payne's gray, which you could use blue liner instead. And then everything cool is built off of that blue-black, and everything warm is built off of that yellow-brown. And that can look really cool. And then mixes of those for your intermediate neutrals. Yeah, naturalistic colors, Dogfather. Yeah, absolutely. That can be super rewarding. And very, very relaxing as well. There's a reason that people used to paint landscapes to relax. I'm going to block in this blue-black. Really want to get this stuff blocked in. If I can get it blocked in, then I know where I'm going. Because right earlier when I was looking at this sucker yesterday, I was like, I have no idea where I'm really going with this. Especially when it gets down here where there's something like might be leather, and then there's plates that are coming in, and you're like, what is this? What is all this? It's just a bunch of stuff. And so it's time for me to keep going at this point. It's time to block in things and get an understanding of what each of these things are. I think these plates here almost have to be the metal, the dark metal, but that means that we need to figure out what we're doing for this under area, which probably is leather. So at that point, do we go with the Hellhound leather and highlight it up, which is a real possibility? Or do I go with, say, a russet brown, take it even more, a different neutral, or even a blackened brown, maybe, and take it up a little bit with our ruddy leather, and then with maybe some polished leather? That way we're keeping it all in the family of colors that we're using, roughly, except for the black and brown, which we previously haven't used. But it's such a dark neutral brown, it probably won't, do anything. It won't look wrong. So then the gold would stand out against it. The blue-black should stand out. And this is probably going to be gold as well. This torso thing. Torso thing, for lack of a better term. Kaz, this is, lately my Raphael has completely kicked my Da Vinci to the curb. I must admit, I am, astounded, because this has never happened in over 20 years of painting, that I have found a brush that I actually prefer to the Da Vinci. But my 84 Raphael 8408, so that's the series, and defines the shape of the brush got it's a Kolinsky, obviously, made in France, and it is a size 1. The size 0 is also very nice, but I got this one out, and once it got broken in, I love how it's able to do anything. I reach for it. I end up reaching for it when I'm doing bigger stuff, but then I love the fact that it can transition to doing eyeballs because the tip is so fine. So I am lately, the Raphael, if I get another one and it's just as good as this one, then I have to say that it's going to share the spotlight with my usual Da Vinci. Though I've also been working with some tinier brushes lately. Just trying to work with the tiny brushes and see how I can make them work. I've been working with the Da Vinci Maestro Series 10 Triple Aught lately, just to see. I'm trying to work with smaller and larger brushes and kind of just to take notes so that when people ask questions, I can give them an opinion. It's always good to be informed. Yeah, up to this point, the Da Vinci Maestro Series 10 size 1 was my only competition brush, but I have to say that this Raphael is going to put a lie to that. But the real test is, when you get another one, is it just as good? because I was able to work with the Maestros over the years, you know, going through dozens of them. Because when I'm painting full-time, I go through them pretty fast. Like, every 6 months, probably. I wear down a Maestro enough to switch out for a new one. If I'm painting seriously. If I'm working on a competition piece, for sure. Like, Soldier completely destroyed a Da Vinci Maestro, and I had to swap to a different one toward the end. Because when you're painting a model that's 12 inches tall, it just, it beats up your brush when you're doing all that tiny stippling like I did on the leather. Alright, so let's see. Do I want to go a little bit off-center here? Do I want to go and make that particular one just gold? I think I might, and I think I might go with this gemstone up here in red. See, this is why this is instructive. When you figuring out, when you figured out kind of your balance of colors, you don't want everything to be symmetrical. That's boring. But you do want to repeat colors, especially an accent color like this red. You want to repeat it over the model, over the course of the model. So I can get away with doing this face in gold instead of red if I put some red up here, right? And I was also thinking that I would do red here in between these bands, because this diamond pattern is kind of like this diamond pattern up here. So then I would have a nice splash of red here, and also have a lesser splash of red here, have the shoulder pads, and then have the little bits here have red. And that would give me my accent color, and spread it out over the model so it's not predictable. Val, I tried them. I mean, I used them for a while back in the day, but they just were not as good as my Da Vinci Maestro. Like the big problem with the Winsor & Newton for me was that it wasn't as consistent. Like, there were definitely runs of brushes where I just did not get a really good brush out of the Winsor & Newton. So I found that Da Vinci, which is a brush that's done in Germany, the Maestro specifically, the Series 10 size 1, I always got really consistent quality out of these. I think in going through dozens and dozens of brushes, I may have gotten a badly constructed brush once. But yeah, so that now my task is to run through this Raphael and wear it out. Obviously I need to paint more busts, or I need to start on my Tracer statue from Overwatch. That'll run through a brush. And then try another one of these and see if it's just as good. Because this brush I can do anything with. I can do micro detail with this sucker, and I can do big stuff. And so I'm very much a fan of this brush right now. Very versatile. And yeah, I mean, Winsor & Newton Series 7, a lot of people get good mileage out of them. In general, I mean, they've been a brush recommended for miniature painting for 4 decades, literally. Many of my friends still like them and use them. I blorfed a bit there, gonna touch it up. But I'm not like gaga over them, because, you know, and maybe they've gotten a bit better about their consistency as far as like quality goes, but they were one of the brushes that I definitely didn't have a great experience with from one brush to another. Like, I would get maybe I think it's their double aught, the size that I really, really always liked. And I'd get a great double aught, and then I'd get a double aught that, you know, wasn't that great. So, and it could have changed over the years, obviously. It's been a while. But I think in mini painting, everybody also likes a little bit of a different shape of brush. Because of everybody's technique can vary, right? So the Winsor & Newtons, I think, are very average as far as the shape goes. Like, their standard round is very standard. Whereas the standard round, you know, for a Raphael is a bulge and then taper. Not as much of a bulge as their full body. But you know what I mean, right? Is they have an extreme taper toward the end that the Winsor & Newton doesn't have. That doesn't have this long tapered end. And so this brush, because I like long, thin, tapering brushes, is excellent for my style, may not be excellent for some other people who need a bit more strength in the tip, based on the style that they're doing, right? Because sometimes you do. If you're doing a lot of like side brushing where you're pushing your tip, you want a tip that's a little more resilient, right? Jennifer used to use filberts for that. Haley, she really liked different And she would use the miniature series, Winsor & Newton, as well, which is a very different shape from the standard. It is not made for painting miniatures. Sorry. I know a lot of people get confused about that, and they try this Winsor & Newton Series 7 and they order the miniature series. You should not ever do that. Well, unless you've got a style where you're pushing your brush sideways a lot, pushing the paint that way. Then you'll like them. The 1-bit cheer. Lang Nickel, Mighty Garrett. Was that Jennifer or me? I don't remember using those. But it's been a long time since I did that video. A lot of what I do in that video is now so far out of date. That is the downside. Like, the upside of doing a video is you can reach a ton of people. Very, you know, and you can, like, give them that real-time that instruction. But then the downside is, as a painter, you change over the years. You swap up what you're doing. Your paint changes. Your brush pick changes, unless you're me. But even now, my brush pick is changing. Yeah, you know, I used to use gunk. I don't use it anymore. I don't have to. You know, Master Series has, you know, come a long way. There are new paint lines. You know, that I like the Scale 75 tube paint came out, and I actually really like the Scale 75 tube paint. So it's like things change over the years. And so the downside is that now your video, which is still available out there, is no longer the way you paint at all. Oh, do we have a new person? Scorpia. Yeah, I'm very knowledge heavy here, Scorpia. Oh, okay. I see. Well, awesome. Or is it Scorpia or Scorpla? Scorpla. Sometimes I have a hard time seeing the screen. It's way over there. But yeah. Yes, welcome. I'm glad that you like the stream. Yeah, mostly, I mean, I talk a lot about color theory. I talk a lot about, like, brush control and brush stroke and paint thinning and all of the bare bones stuff. I also just messed up my sword with a blorf. This is very sad. Now I must correct the blorf. Oh, that's a little too light. But that's alright. I can fix it. The attitude to have is, I can fix it. It's the most useful attitude in mini painting, I think. I mean, that doesn't mean you shouldn't cuss for a couple seconds, but, you know, then get over yourself and fix it. Yeah, I believe it, Koofs, with the product availability up there. Oh yeah, I mean, I'm not dropping my DaVinci Maestro Series 10 size 1 anytime soon, non-zero. Don't get me wrong here. I'm just saying that for the first time in my life, my mini painting career, which stretches way too long and makes me way too old, I finally have found another brush that I would recommend with the same confidence level, assuming that I use multiples of them and they all perform this well. Because right now I'm in love with this brush and I reach for it all the time. And it's been a very, very long time since that happened. Like, almost never. Not since I discovered my DaVinci. Alrighty, so good. So we've got our beard adjusted a bit. Our light is now coming consistently down this side. We still haven't really messed with up there, though. Let's mess with up there. It's so weird to use the wet palette. It's so weird. And, of course, we've got other things. We've got, like, these just weird plates up here. We have to figure out how we want to highlight them. Sometimes you just look at a detail and you're just like, and you're just not sure. So just start blocking stuff in. And then adjust it. Sometimes, I mean, I have a pretty good instinctual grasp of NMM at this point. Just gut grasp of it. But there are still times where I look at a surface and I'm just like, okay, what? And I have to stop and think. It doesn't come naturally to me. None of the light stuff comes naturally to me. David is the man who can just look at things and go, yeah, like that. But color is my dealio, and I had to fight for light. I had to fight to understand light. I really wanted to because I loved the way that NMM looked, and so there was a time when I was first freelancing, so this was a very long time ago, almost 20 years ago, where I was just staring at metal things, trying to understand how they worked. How the shine worked. So we're just bringing up some light here. I'm going to try to troubleshoot it and see where I'm screwing up. This is, again, the front of this. See, this is where you get into interesting territory, right? Because the front of this helmet definitely has a break in it. It definitely has a bend, but it's also a cylinder, right? Just like this faceplate under it. So we kind of have to pay attention to that and highlight it similarly, even though it may look weird and counterintuitive to us at first. But I think I can bring this up there. So I'm not even blending. You can see I'm just using dashes. And sometimes that's really useful to do, guys. It's just like, don't worry about blending at all. Just dash in your highlight and see, then kind of look at it back out. Maybe look at it on camera like I do here and see if it looks right. See if it looks like metal to you. And keep doing. Remember, we have another secondary highlight that comes around the edge here. Oh, we've got another edge. Okay, so this is actually, this helmet has 4 angles on it. If I run my brush lightly up it, there are definitely 4 linear angles on this helmet. So like that. So it's star-shaped, actually. It's just like got quadrants. Rounded quadrants. Oh, fun. Who did this? Chris Lewis? Do I have to yell at him? Seriously.
For making interesting shapes to do NMM on?
Yes, absolutely. I'm not looking for an interest.
That's the sort of thing that merits positive reinforcement, not negative reinforcement.
So I'm going to go yell at Chris, and David's going to go, no, keep it up.
It when we have interesting NMM surfaces.
I do, but this is the kind of interesting NMM surface that will absolutely make me go crazy and, like, gnaw my own arm off. I mean...
We like it when we have interesting NMM surfaces, except when it's Monday and we had not enough sleep.
Yes, and it's definitely it's Tuesday. I guess if we didn't have enough sleep... Yeah,
Sorry,
it's Tuesday.
I swear on your stream.
Oh! David! Do I have to mute him, guys? Do I have to mute him? This is like Overwatch League. No F-bombs. Family friendly. Do I think OSL is a good way to get better at NMM? I think OSL will make you think about lighting. It will not teach you about reflectivity, but it will definitely get you to think about directional lighting, which can help. But I tend to think that just working on your zenith highlighting and consistency of highlighting may help your NMM a little bit more. They probably, I mean, I don't know, David, what do you think? You're the OSL freak.
Sorry, what?
Can, if you're having trouble with NMM, can switching to working on OSL help you get better at NMM? Or do you feel like that might complicate things?
Yeah, I think maybe a little bit, because they're both about sort of understanding how light moves and reflects. But the big difference with OSL, you're kind of changing where the light is coming from, and with NMM, you're not changing where the light's coming from, but you're changing how it reflects, because you're trying to show how it reflects off of a shiny surface, which is very different from how it reflects off a matte surface.
Yes, it's Creatureist NMM non-metallic metal. What I'm doing here with using yellows and browns and reds and whites to paint this as if it were metal. And likewise up here, which I'm doing kind of a black iron, blued steel kind of look. So NMM non-metallic metal, as opposed to TMM, true metallic metal, where you're using actual metallics to represent metal, but maybe you're shading and highlighting them a lot, like this guy that I did. So he's got a lot of different shading. You can see on his breastplate. This is TMM. This is true metallic metal. So at probably its highest level, close to it. And then the other acronym is OSL, Other Source Lighting, which, as David just pointed out, is using a different light source than the standard. OSL can be, just your only light source is a glowing sword or a campfire, or it can be an additional light source in addition to overhead lighting, which is usually, daylight type of lighting. I still haven't gotten close to a Sadie stream. Oh my gosh, does she drop that many? I don't even want to know. Oh, good. Yeah, that's rare for a synthetic. They are getting better, Kuruniko. They are really getting better at synthetic, and I think they're doing it because they want to be able to provide a cheaper option that's as good as sable, because whoever manages to crack that nut is probably going to make a lot of money. And so they're working with synthetic hairs now that are crafted to look like real hairs, to taper like real hairs. So, sorry, aside from the voice is my boyfriend David, who is also a world-class miniature painter and a crystal brush winner. He is really good at lighting. He's doing 2 classes at ReaperCon, David Diamondstone, and his website is lightminiatures.com. If you LIGHT miniatures.com if you want to go take a look at his work. He is awesome. Of course, I'm a little bit biased that he's awesome. Yeah, Jetta Rose with the mini painting power couple. Yes, indeed. You kind of enable her, Mighty Garrett. Yeah, I believe that. Yeah, no problem, Scorple. Yeah, we toss those around, and I usually try to explain them, but sometimes on days when I'm sleep deprived, I forget. I'm going to paint in this face gold. I think we're going to do this little face in gold, because doing this face in gold lets us do all sorts of cool reflections. Like, there are times, as David was saying, when doing interesting, complex surfaces for NMM makes us happy. I like making metallic faces. I think they look really cool, so we're going to do that on this side. Maybe we'll do the whole thing. Oh, my paint is getting so thin. That is the problem with the wet palette. So thin paint. I probably overloaded it with water. But I really find that when using parchment paper, like, I want to overload it with water. So maybe I just need to switch up my wet palette paper. Maybe I need to get the wet palette that David is using now. What company puts that out, hun? The one you're testing?
Redgrass Games.
Redgrass Games. Is their Kickstarter? It's probably ended, huh? I wondered if their Kickstarter was still going.
They might have a new one. They keep doing...
They are a company that sustains itself on Kickstarters? Yeah, that's a thing. I'm looking at you, Simon. Oh, is that my outside voice? But, alright. There we are. So we're blocking in our colors. The Everlasting Wet Palette from Redgrass. Yeah. David's using Redgrass's new one. One of David's classes is actually not a Twitch class, Mighty Garrett.
Yeah, I'm doing OSL on Twitch, and I'm doing painting bust faces on Zoom.
There's nothing wrong with cast support, Mathophile. It can get you in trouble as a company if your company is entirely sustained on Kickstarters, which is a thing. Kickstarter is supposed to be for building infrastructure, but the ideal is that after the Kickstarter, you can prosper, selling the product that you've had made. But I know of companies that have fallen into the trap, and Ed was very conscious of this when he was looking at Reaper's Kickstarter strategy, and he did not want to become this, but there are companies that essentially go through their Kickstarter money, aren't making enough money to sustain, and have to do another Kickstarter in order to sustain. That's where you get in the trap, I think, of Kickstarter. I think that miniatures companies or hobby companies can fall into the trap that game stores did for so long and still do, in that people want to start a miniatures company or a game company, and it becomes their baby and their hobby, like it's their toy almost. And so maybe they aren't as good at balancing the finances as they could be, and then you get into trouble, right? And just like any new business, right? If you're not good at finances, or you don't hire somebody who's good at finances, you can get into big trouble. So that's the big danger with Kickstarter.
I mean, the thing about Kickstarter is you get all of this money based on what you think things are going to cost, but inevitably there are unforeseen expenses, and sometimes people are not spending wisely because they have all this money in their bank account, but it turns out that they run out of money before they actually produce the thing that they were promising to their backers.
And sometimes they don't sell as many of that thing maybe afterwards as they need to sustain themselves. Yeah, so what David said, Mathophile, it's not that they only sell it during the chaos, but that maybe they've just been bad with their chaos money, or they end up having to scrape by. They get a financial imbalance somewhere, because Kickstarter makes you feel like you have all the money in the world, but then you don't, right? You still and then unforeseen costs always come up. Things are always more expensive than you think. Because in the meantime, you've been running this Kickstarter. It could take you, like Reaper, it could take you over a year to fulfill from that. And in the meantime, costs and tariffs are going up, and taxes, if you're dealing with anybody outside of, your own country. You could get into problems with mail. Like, we didn't realize that postage was going to be such a huge cost when we did our first Kickstarter. And look at it now with postal costs going even higher. So there's all these expenses with Kickstarter. And, yeah. Some companies don't bother with post-Kickstarter distribution, yeah. Yeah, some don't. Some just in that case you are really just relying on the Kickstarter to fund your entire business model. Which I guess can work. I just always feel it's kind of dangerous. Yeah, it's just it's the Kickstarter business model is I think what Ed has called it in the past. And he did not want Reaper to be beholden to that sort of thing. Ed likes to have freedom to pivot, and he's a very smart businessman. I mean, he's kept Reaper afloat. He and Dave have kept Reaper afloat for a very long time, because they're smart about business. I mean, we always joke that Reaper's still around because it's run by accountants, and you can curse that it is run by accountants because it doesn't give you all the awesome things that you wish you had. But at the same time, that's why Reaper's still around. So I think a lot of startup game companies, they'll use Kickstarter and they'll have all this money and they'll be super excited. And then maybe something happens. They're like, oh crap, we have to spend a lot of this money, but we already spent a lot of this money to do X or Y or Z. Now what do we do? Well, we run another Kickstarter to fulfill our first Kickstarter, and that's something that happens way too often. I'm just lining around this a little bit just to make this belly thing stand out. I think I've got a pretty good balance now. I still need to decide about this leather and these arm bands. Why do you have an armored armpit? I mean, I guess because if somebody sticks a sword in there, there's no bone to stop it. But I guess maybe if you're a giant, you need armored armpits. It just seems like it would be really uncomfortable. Like chafing, for sure, right? Hello. Hey, Hope. Oh, jeez. Right. A company has failed to deliver on 7 Kickstarters and now have been investigated by their state attorney general. Yeah, and that happens, right? That's the sad thing. Like, Kickstarter is so good. It's been so good for Reaper. Like, it's allowed us to build infrastructure we would have had to take decades to build otherwise. But yeah, it can be dangerous, too. I mean, because you know how bad people are with money. I mean, in general, in America, right? People are terrible with money. And so that's why people have to, that's why, 80% of Americans over the age of, 50 said that they had to, take out a loan to write a $500 check or something like that. I forget that data. I'm sure that's not quite as bad as I made it sound. But we're bad with it, right? Like, we don't have a lot of tools in our country growing up, unless our parents are very good and teach us good financial habits. There isn't a lot of stuff out there until you're older and horribly in debt. And, we have a lot of people in financial problem in this country. And so you've got the average American going out and doing a Kickstarter, and then they have to figure out how to allocate that money, maybe over as long as a year. So yeah, it's hard. It's hard to do. Plus, Kickstarter is a lot of work. Hey there, Bob and Julie. And that's why many of our sculptors, since Bob and Julie just got into chat, this is why many of our sculptors take advantage of Reaper's generous offer. Instead of running their own Kickstarters, they do a level on our Kickstarter. So when you see things like, I don't know whose levels were whose, but if you see Bobby Jackson's blah, that's probably Bobby's level. Like, he wanted to sculpt those models really a lot. And so he, instead of doing his own Kickstarter to make those a thing, he worked with Reaper and just got a level on our Kickstarter. So it helps both of us, right? We get to maybe put out some cool models that we wouldn't otherwise have had because they were Bobby just sculpting for fun, right? So, all right, I'm going to go with the armpit armor, guys. I'm really dubious about it, but I guess you'd probably need a pike for a giant, though, Mighty Garrett. Let's see here. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, the thing... Ah, but it's different, actually. The shoulder pads are a diamond pattern. You can see that in the light. And these actually are diamonds, but have runes or little things. I guess maybe I could do them red. You bring up a good point in that it would let us repeat that color. Who said it? Was it Lynx? It was sales department. You could go either way. Okay, so let's actually, you bring up a great point, sales department. We have now reached the next section of the figure. So let's get his bottom and look at what's next to it, shall we? Let's see here. Because if we want to alternate stuff, all right, so what we've got down here is diamonds. So what I would be likely to do is take this red, all of this big diamond area, because I was also going to take the hilt of the sword red. So we would have red up here with these diamonds. We'd have red here with these diamonds. I could do red inside and do gold bands around the outside here if I wanted another color splash. That's a very interesting idea. It could totally work. That said, you don't have to do that. Like on models like this that are terribly complex, I could make the call, right, that, okay, I just don't feel like this needs to be red because all of this is going to be red. Or I could put a little bit of red in here. It's going to be easier, however, I think, probably, to make these tiny little details show up a bit with NMM, because I can do those really bright white highlights on them. I could probably do the same with red, but it might not be as bright. Yeah, exactly. He forgot he was a full figure and not a bust, right, Dragon Eye? Exactly. But yeah. This wasn't on my bingo card. The river's on fire again. Yeah, sure. No problem, Shadow Raven. We're almost to the end here. But yeah, so the answer is absolutely you could make the inside. It's actually got a band around the outside, which I now see having painted it. So I could go with just a gold band around it and make the interior red. And then make this band here is going to probably be gold and make these guys red. Then I have to really look at and what I'm going to do here, what I'm going to do. This is where it's getting even more complicated. Yeah. So this is probably going to be red. It's probably like either painted scale mail or armor, or it's like just indented plate, or it's, you know, maybe it's leather. It's something. It could be leather over metal with that pattern. But yeah, so now I'm sitting here going, I'm still really debating though. I don't like that there's this like under armor. Like I almost want, normally I would paint this blued, but then I have these things. I guess I could make them fancy, or I could make it all blued and just go, but that doesn't really make sense. I am very conflicted about this shirt. I don't know what I want to do with it. And because it definitely reads like leather. It reads like leather, and then you've got these big chunky plates. I'm very dubious about the shirt. So let's look at the back. Maybe that helps us. Yeah, it's leather because I can see his shoulder blades through it. Not that anybody will see this because he's got this big cape that goes over it. We haven't even started on that. This is a pretty complicated model, guys. It's a cummerbund. It's a fancy cummerbund. Well, then it needs to be red. That figure has a lot going on. No joke, right, Jetta? And that's what makes it hard. And that could be why... it's just taking a long time to, like, get all this mocked out, right? He just is very complicated. It could be why I'm also reaching for a very simple color scheme. I don't want to go too far outside of what I'm getting set up. Oh dear. All right. I'm going to stay conflicted. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually block in all of this area with my blue liner. And then I'm going to look at it. I'm essentially going to sleep on it because this works, right? I'm going to sleep on it and come back to it and see if I feel like those bands need to be something else or if they can all be just the blue-black metal. Because I actually don't have a lot of blue black metal on him yet, except for like the helmet and the outside of these. And I want more. I want a lot of that blue black metal to actually show up. He's just so fancy. He's got so much filigree and detailing on him that you want to make him. It's almost time to glue this together. I have to clean this part though. So I may come back and decide that I do want to take up this leather under thing. Because you really could paint it anyway. You could paint it metal, or you could paint it leather. The only thing that makes it leather is the shoulder blades on his back again. But if you're putting the cape on, you're never going to see that. So it could all be metal. I tend to treat leather and metal pretty interchangeably on sculpts. I'll just decide what the character is wearing based on the color scheme I want and just paint it that way. I mean, people could call you on it and say, I thought that was leather. And you could say, well, I just decided to paint it as metal. It's the way it is. If you don't like it, don't paint it that way.
Is the red going to be copper?
I tend not to cross the streams with two warm metals on the same figure. The red was going to be just like an enamel red. I'm still not sold on it completely. I want to highlight and shade it. There's going to be some gold on the inside. Some of this has, this has panels set into it. But I wanted a different color for these, and I tried orange and it didn't work. So I don't know if I want to try copper next to the, considering how reddish I've taken the gold. I guess you could put some green in it then. But it's a very different orange profile too. Mm-hmm. The tarnished copper base that I like to use. I don't know, it might clash with this quite a bit. But yeah, this red, I was talking about maybe using even a lighter, like a greenish blue or something. I wasn't sure.
So you're thinking it's like a red enamel glaze over gold?
Yeah. And then a gold inlay or just a red enamel fill. Yeah. Like this is like the iron, but then it's got like a gold fill and maybe a red enamel over it. Something like that. Mm-hmm. Not like you have to like really delineate these things, right? If the shoulder pads here are like metal, I mean, it could be the same thing. Although these also look like leather to me. It's so weird. There are areas on this model which definitely look like leather that I would not think would be leather. But we'll see. The red may not stick, as I'm not like loving it. It's okay, but I'm not loving it. So we may yet change it. I'm going to block this in.
I feel like with red in particular, when I just base coat it, it often looks way too bright and saturated.
Yep.
And when I highlight it and shade it, it knocks it back.
That's what I'm depending on, pretty much. Also, I'm going to be interrupting it because there is these gold triangles that go on top of it. So in this particular area. So, but I agree with you. It's way too bright, way too saturated right now for the rest of the piece. So right now it's a placeholder, and if I decide that I get some smart idea for something else that I like better, it could shift. All right, so we're getting him kind of blocked in, guys. Look, he looks like he's got so much more paint on him now. Pendrake, these suckers, oh my gosh, like they've got so much crap on them. Now, a lot on these vambraces a lot of these things is gonna depend on where I go with some of the rest of this stuff if I decide to keep the red, for example. There definitely are some plates on the back here that I would do in my blued metal. So I might start out blocking in that and then try to figure out what some of the rest of this. I did kind of want to do this fancy bracelet in gold. So then I almost have to work out from there. It's very difficult. This is so difficult. That's why I'm waiting on it. I want to if I get the rest of this all blocked in and I decide for sure on the red or not to red, then this becomes a little easier maybe to figure out what I want to do. So like these look like they're leather, you know, there's just so many. There's things on here that look like leather that might not be leather. I mean, some of these might actually be metal. Could paint them either way. Go do coffee, you do half the figure. I'm blocking in a lot. I figured, because once I've got the colors blocked in, then highlighting and shading them is the fun part, right? So I decided, scrying eye, that I wanted really to block in a lot of colors and kind of figure out. It was bothering me that I didn't have this stuff figured out yet. Really bothering me. And so now I'm a little happier here because I can at least get all this stuff going on. Next, it will bother me that I haven't figured this out. But once I have all this figured out, then I've got a guide, right? Because technically, these triangles up here, as sales guy said earlier, this could go red because that is red, right? And this could go probably red and gold because that's red. That's going to probably be blue-black. The only weird things are these little studded things. So then we're not sure on the studded things yet. Whee. But yeah, I mean, it could be like plates with leather over the top of them, but I'm definitely painting the blue-black stuff like iron, or black and steel. So it's, because I want that cooler, bluer accent. I really want that blue with the orange for the complementary colors. So that's where my blue comes in on Fire Giants, is really, really dark blue-black. But it's still blue enough that you can see it, right? And the great thing about it is remember complementary colors and how they work. Where when you introduce a complementary color, it makes its complement look brighter. So by just introducing this dark blue, even though it's really quite dark, especially once I put another coat on it, by just introducing this color, I'm going to make these oranges really pop. And that's what I want on a Fire Giant. I want the oranges and the golds and everything to just really pop. So by using blue, I am enabling that to happen. Not a wizard, I'm just a frustrated person who wants more paint on this figure. Okay, so now you can see, by the way, that this has dulled down a bit. The fur here that was really shiny earlier, it still is reading a little glossy. I might put a sealer over it to dull it down, or just maybe put a wash over it to dull it down. We'll see. But yeah, so we've gotten at least some things blocked in. At least we've got the front looking like it is more or less blocked in. But yeah, after I highlight and shade some of this stuff, I'm definitely going to have to deal with the rest of this figure. So this area is probably going to be the blue with gold. I might come up and make this the blue-black. Yeah, it's going to be dancing back and forth to make sure that all of these details stand out. Channeling Wapple to an extent, work the whole figure. Yeah, I mean, I go back and forth, Pendrake. My style changes, I think, from figure to figure as far as how I tackle it. Something like this where it really is complicated and I go into it not quite knowing where I want some of this stuff to be or what I want some of this stuff to be. I just start at a point where I know it and work out. Like, I knew what I wanted to do. Once I had done the sword in metal and I didn't like it, then I knew after a couple days what I wanted to do with the sword. So I start there, right? And that kind of gives me a color palette then to apply to other places. You know, I start with the skin because I knew what color I wanted it to be. And the face, I knew what I wanted to do there. So then I work outward from there. Just choosing colors to make things stand out so that you can see the details, and trying to alternate my darks and lights and warms and cools where I can, so that I know that everything will stand out. But yeah, the hope is that for him to look quite shiny and magical at the end of it all. I am really happy with the sword and the face at this point. So that's good. As long as you do it and you're happy with it, that it gets you excited to keep going, right? And with a model like this is going to be such a long slog of a model, because he is so big and he has so much crap, that you need that. You need that enthusiasm. You need to say, oh, I like how he's looking. It makes me want to work on him more, right? David does that a lot, too. He's out of the room right now, so I can talk about him freely. But David does it. If David likes a model, you'll know, because he'll carry it around the whole house with him. He'll, like, prop it up in the kitchen so he can kind of wash dishes and look at it. You know, he'll have it next to him when he's playing computer games, up on a shelf high up so that he can easily look at it when he's between games or between maps or whatever. It's really funny, but I have to admit it works. Like, essentially what he's doing is, since he's so happy with it, it keeps him excited to paint it, and it also lets him think about what he wants to do next. So really, for this dude, I should probably prop him up somewhere where I can see him a lot, and it would it would make me want to work on him, and it would keep him in my mind's eye, so to speak. Yeah, might as well be a bust, right? He is really big. He'd probably be like a 1/14 scale bust. He's so out of scale. He has giants. These giants really suffer from pinhead syndromes. Their arms are huge and their torsos are big, but their heads are tiny. But yeah, he's kind of like my one. He's totally out of scale with the arms. He's kind of probably around a 1/12. But yeah, he'd definitely be bust size. Definitely. We could just stop here. We could just finish out the top, mount him on something, sculpt over the bottom here, and turn him into a bust, and then we wouldn't have to paint the bottom, right? Although at this point I should definitely glue him down, because I have actually base coated down to that area. So I can actually need to finish out the back, but that will give me something unpainted to hold as I work on him, which is important. And it will also show us just how much we have yet to go. But yeah, I do want to finish painting the back, even though his cape goes down here. We'll just blow some paint down here. What do you think, Justin? Do we have a raid? Do we have anybody exciting to raid?
Let's see here.
While I block in more color back here.
We have a Zambies and a Michael Mordor.
Oh, well, we haven't raided Michael in this show in quite a while, I think.
All right, let's raid Michael.
Let's raid Michael. I know there was somebody in chat who was waiting for Michael's show to start and came over. So now you can go and raid Michael. You can be the banner holder for the raid.
Oh, that is true. Zambies is doing an anniversary show.
Oh, is she?
We raided, yeah.
I don't know. What do you guys think? Should we do Zambies because she's doing an anniversary show, or should we do Michael because we haven't rated him for a while? Yeah, no problem, Creaturist. It's good to meet you. It's good to meet you, a lot of you guys. He's coming along. He's coming along. This giant will take a long time, many streams, but and I'll probably throw some different models in for the rest of the week, just because you get to a point where you're just like, okay, now I just want to kind of put it off. Let's do anniversary Zambies. Zambies today, Michael's tomorrow. If Michael's streaming tomorrow, yeah, sure.
Sounds good to me.
All right, so anybody going over to Michael's stream, tell him he has to stream tomorrow at about this time, so that we can rate him. Laters, guys. Have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Pass on our love to Zambies. Say hello for us. Keep being awesome, guys, and I will see you this afternoon for Crow's Nest, which should still be going off as intended. I believe the guest today is Frank from Nightheart Gaming, which is the fellow who runs our Reaper Rant on Friday nights. You guys won't want to miss it. It'll be fun. Thank you very much. See you guys later.